Het-Heru Nefer, Namaste. This is Kasakma Keperu with another broadcast for you. And today we have an interesting subject. We're going to talk about how to achieve unlimited power using Stoicism, Meneb, and Het-Heru Hathor. So brace yourself. This is going to be a powerful one. But as usual, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you like my content, and feel free to contribute to our Patreon campaign. Heru Nefer, JD, Het-Heru. Now, I just took some herbs, so if I seem a little silly, please forgive me. But it's a great feeling. All right. Okay, check it out. I want to endorse this wellness formula. You can get this at Vitamin Shop. You take 3 tablets a day, and they're packed full of vitamins. You've got your vitamin B, your vitamin D, your vitamin C, your zinc, your what's we got here? Wow, a lot. Echinacea. Wow. I mean, this thing is like really like concentrated. But what I found out that it really builds your immune system, so you won't catch cold or anything like that. Don't get the flu shot. Just take these, or take whatever you think you should take, because I'm not a doctor. I can't advise you, but I tested this, and this is really good. It builds your immune system, and it gives you energy. And I have noticed a lot of things I take that say they give you boost energy. They don't really do it, but this, I noticed the improvement, because I could go longer physically throughout the day, and mentally I was sharp and aware of things. So get this if you can. And I've read a lot about this online, and they some of the forums talk about how they changed the formula, and that it's not as good as it used to be, but I still think the effects are pretty good. All right. So I see the group of magicians have joined the chat room. So let me just say Heru Nefer, Sue Ann, Zahai Bell, Heru Nefer. Am I using edible marijuana? No, I'm not using edible marijuana. No, I've never done marijuana. I've done a lot of things in my time, but not that, I stay away from drugs and stuff. I really just stay with the all natural herbs and stuff, and still end up in a hospital. I don't know how that happens, It's very, very funny. So before we get into the topic of today, I want to talk to you about dealing with your so-called enemies, because we all have people that get on a nerve or do things that are wrong. Now, me especially, I deal in a lot of business, and I hire people, I fire people, and some people I hire, quite frankly, lie on their resume, and then when I terminate them, they get all bitter and angry and try to do things like get online and troll me and do things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Now, as a magi or a magician, I've made several videos on the fact that you should never, never get into a confrontation. This is why we practice Stoicism or Meneb, keeping the heart still to live truth. No matter how angry the individual gets, or how you feel like, I'm right. And you may well be right, but that is no reason to have an emotional reaction. Okay. So the one thing you want to do is rely on your magical abilities, right? Now, when I was first starting out as a magician, I was in the priesthood, and one of the other guys was with me. We went to a magic store, and I was looking for a wand, because most magicians who practice, they want to start out at the Western or European traditional route by having a wand in their rituals. And one of the things I picked up was this one. This is my wand. And actually, it was very difficult for me to hold this, because it was so powerful. I could feel the energy. And it actually was burning my hand, to the fact that I told my friend, who, as I said before, was in the priesthood with me. I said, this is really hurting me. He says, it's powerful. Buy that one. So I bought this one, and ever since, it's been serving me well, and I've actually charged it with the energy that I want, my intention, because it's a quartz crystal wrapped with a copper wire, and this is a feather. And I like the feather because it's a symbolization of Ma'at, right? So what is my point? My point is that I use a lot of crystals in my magic. So, for example, if I have someone that I think, who is my enemy? And remember, El-Heru says there is no enemy because you're one with all things, so you cannot oppose yourself. So, but just say, for example, I have somebody as I work in corporate America and they sit across from me and we're always arguing and bickering. So I have an array of crystals, and each crystal is magically charged for a specific purpose. This one may be to ward off negative people. This one is to bring me wisdom and luck. So, what I could do is I would go to that person's desk who's caused me some issues and probably just put this under his seat or something like that. And then in a few days, you will notice a difference. Again, because this is magically charged with a certain particular energy. And I'd use a hakao, a mantra, which comes from Indus Kush, to charge it so that the energy resonates, and the person sitting in the seat, if this is under his seat or on his desk, the energy will affect them. And that energy is what we call nekabet, okay? And in ancient Kemet, Egypt, when you first came into Egypt, you would see the serpent, nekabet. And that was the psychic power that would ward off foreigners, okay? So work with crystals, quartz crystals, and you can have copper wire is really good because it's a conductor. So, and you would charge these on a full moon. And when they're charged properly, you'll feel the energy and you can start using these in your magical practice. For example, this young kid I was mentoring wanted to really do good in baseball. He was very, he lacked confidence in himself. So I had one crystal that was courage, confidence. And I gave him this and I said, I want you to put this in your pocket when you're playing baseball. And it actually, and then I also did some hypnosis with him. I put him in trance state, that's Osset or Isis. And I fed him positive suggestions that he is a star athlete. And do you know, he did extremely well. So this is the power that we have as magicians, magi's, or priests or priestesses, okay? Haru Nefer Osset, how are you? Osset Ma'at. Crystals are very good. They're one of the best carriers of energy. Now, when you're charging your crystals and you're doing these things, do not let anyone else touch them because their energy will rub off on the crystal and then it will defeat the purpose, okay? You have to keep this crystal on your shrine. And what I do is I put it on my shrine with herbs and, magical herbs around it that will enhance the energy, okay? So there you go. Yeah, you should keep them in your pockets. Yeah, your pocket. Yeah, that's perfect, JD. Exactly. Yeah, candles work. I would put a sigil on a candle. I would engrave it with a sigil, and that would be powerful, okay? Because that's candle magic, But anyway, let me get to the main point here. Is that I'm sorry I have to eat, but when you take the vitamins on an empty stomach, if you don't put something else behind it, meaning food, you'll get a little nauseous feeling, like you may throw up. So it's good, you take the vitamins on an empty stomach, it goes right into your bloodstream. But at the same time, when it's dissolving, it'll make you feel sick unless you eat something, So you should never take them on an empty stomach. But I'm dangerous. I do things that way. So I got up this morning, right, and I found out that, the Osiris report that we have pimped up and created a new one, Osiris Report 2.0, I found out that the website was taken down. So I called my social media people. I have a team of social media people. And I'm like, what's going on? Why did you take down all of my sites? And they were like, well, they're attacking you again. It's cyber attack. And previously, 2 years ago, we had a really great website called Project Illuminated, and that was taken down through cyber attack. So this time the same thing happened, but I'm not worried about it. We'll get it back up. So if you've been trying to get the Osiris report and you've come to a dead page, don't worry. We're working on getting that back up. So I got up this morning and I went to the office. And I was really on the phone all day trying to resolve this issue because it's not just as easy as putting a site back up, but you have to secure it again. You have to secure it in a new way so that the cyber attackers, when they come back, they don't find any vulnerabilities, okay? And I work with an IT guy. He's amazing. His name is Lou, and he's really cool. So I didn't know when I got into the office when I was dealing with this one situation that, and just to let you know, like, it didn't bother me. You know, I mean, when you're practicing your Maneb and Stoicism, you know, this could have, I actually lost money, but this could have really bothered me. And I was like, okay, well, you know, these things happen. So and you know, I know that there are agents out there who don't want the information out, and they target the Osiris report purposely because I'm really revealing a lot of stuff. And I can't reveal too much because then that could put people in danger, close people, my family, me in danger. So I can never tell you guys everything I know because that will be a big problem. But I can reveal some stuff to you that will empower you. So, Deborah, Heru Nefer. So, you know, of course, Deborah, to answer your question, why I ended up at the hospital, I always do, because what I do is I test out herbs and I mix and match. And what I try to do is increase the tolerance that my body has of certain types of herbs. And if I don't do it carefully, then my body has a negative reaction. And then what I have to do is I have to go to the hospital, and then they have to, you know, get that stuff out my system. And it's happened a number of times. You know, they know, like I said, they know my name, and they're like, "Oh, you're back again? What did you take this time?" You know? So I'm learning to take it to control the doses so it doesn't put my body into a state of shock. And I've been near death and all of that by, you know, pushing the envelope. But that's the way I've chosen to live, is because I want to get to the highest level spiritually that I can. But back to my story, I was in the office, and I didn't know that we were doing a casting for a commercial today, which is interesting. No one told me this, of course. They leave me out of things, you know. So I'm sitting there trying to get this issue resolved with our website, and I've noticed this influx of pretty girls. And they were like, "Where's the casting?" So I took them to the back room where there's a waiting room with all the girls there. And each time throughout the day, there were more girls coming in. I mean, super pretty. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. And I've been through a lot of castings. But they all kept coming up to me. And the team was just laughing, and because they saw that, you know, I guess I was expressing a lot of joy. I was happy to be, you know, with the girls and everything. And they were just making jokes in a positive way. And I recall many, many years ago, I got hired by this company as a consultant to fix their blog. Their blog went down, and I had to go in there and fix it. And as I did, they wanted me to do some interviews with possible candidates to come in there and be permanent to fix, you know, their websites and stuff. So they noticed that I was doing interviews and other people were doing interviews, but they noticed that all the pretty girls kept coming to interview with me. So finally, one day they pulled me into the office and said, "Are you running a dating service?" I said, "No, I'm not running a dating service. What are you talking about? I'm just interviewing people." "Well, why are all the girls coming to you?" I said, "Because I'm pretty." I don't know, you know. So what is my point? My point is that today when we're doing the casting, everybody's looking at me and enjoying it. There's a difference in terms of expression. When you're expressing Het-Heru, the joy that's within you, Het-Heru is joy that's not dependent upon anything externally, but is within you. You invoke that joy. So the joy that I have is like, it's not necessarily attraction for the women, but it's just a joy of being social. Now, you mustn't mistake that for, oh, he wants the girls. That's not the case. And I think many people don't understand how to operate at the Sahu level, the animal nature, and the higher level. There's two divisions to your spirit. I've always talked about this, right? In Western society, we operate at the Sahu level, where it's the animal spirit. So when you look at people like Cardi B and who's the other one, Nicki Minaj, those are women that are acting out of the animal spirit. That's a very negative energy, right? And you know that Ma'at, who is my mother, she is the highest expression of love, giving, seeking nothing in return. Now, it just so happens I have a better relationship with Het-Heru than I do with Ma'at, because Ma'at is a very cold, dry energy. So Ma'at loves you, but is not affectionate. And that's always been my issue with Ma'at. And I understand that. You know, I've always understood that about her. And so my aunt, Het-Heru, Hathor, has taken me under her wing and has always helped me in situations, meaning she has given me inner joy when things in the external world may not have been going the way I wanted to, and sometimes in the face of great challenges. So me and Het-Heru have had a great relationship. And sometimes my relationship with Ma'at has been strained because I would be like, well, Ma'at, why did this have to happen? Why did you do this? You know, I've always tried to live truth and this bad thing happened to me. And it wasn't recently until I learned the truth of this. And I'm going to pass this on to you as aspiring magi's, magicians, so you won't have to go through the hard time that I did in understanding this high level of spiritual truth. It is not the fact of in life that bad things happen to you. They will. And you must expect them to happen, because there's nothing you can do about that, because you have this thing called destiny. And within your destiny or your pre-life agreement, you have set it up so that obstructions and things of that nature will hit you, and they will hit you very hard. Now, the Western society is so corrupt. They give you this image or this idea of the cowboy riding off into the sunset, living happily ever after. They give you this idea that there is a possibility of having a beautiful and wonderful life with no problems. That is a lie. In fact, I hate most modern movies because they always paint it as the good guy wins in the end. God does not promise you that you will win in the end. Understand that. But, you know, you have your Christian leaders who lie to you and promise you that your life can be happy if just as you believe in this external God. That is an absolute lie. What God has given you is a very powerful thing called Amen. And that is inner peace if you choose to tune into it. So God says, listen, I'm putting you on Geb, Gaia. And on Gaia, you're going to have major issues. And in our early development, we had succumbed to things like tornadoes, hurricanes, the weather, earthquakes, which could destroy crops. There would be famine. So it was a very tough time in our early development. And we had to learn, our ancestors, to be at peace no matter what would happen in the face of the greatest tragedies. The birth of a young child, a beautiful child, back then could die because of famine. But you still had to be at peace, understanding that this is how it is, that the one constant in the universe is change. This is why the grand, great oracle, the I-Ching, is called the Book of Changes. And what that means is that it teaches you how to change with the change, so you're in alignment with the change. And you're not in disharmony with the change and fighting it. You know, when you find that people have a terminal disease, there's these phases they go through. One is that they reject the idea of their impending death. Then they get to a stage of acceptance. Another state, well, before acceptance, there's negotiation when they try and negotiate with God, you know, and then there's the acceptance phase. And this is what Stoicism has to be about. You have to stop having this ideal of what life is, the ideal life. Oh, I'm going to marry somebody who's pretty, wealthy, whatever, and have 2 children, a doggy and a white picket fence and all that. No, get rid of those ideas. Understand that if those things come, great. If they don't come, that's okay too, because you'll always be centered, because as my aunt Het-Heru says, joy is in the journey and not the destination. Joy is within, and you have the ability to invoke joy. When I was in priesthood, the friend I had told you about, me and him, we trained together, and it got to a point where he says, well, you know, Kasank, they're going to ask us to pick a wife pretty soon, because that's the way you do it. So I looked around and I saw this one woman, and Kasank says, are you like eyeing her? Now, remember what I said. There was, you know, when you're operating at the higher level, you're not operating based on attraction. So he said, and he had done a reading, and he says, the reading said that you two should be mates. And I said, well, I'm not really attracted to her. And he said, well, that's not really the issue. The oracle has sanctioned the union. So this is something you should do. Now, understand that when you get to a high level of spirituality, in selecting a mate, you should not be doing that based on your Sahu animal spirit, meaning if the mate actually excites you or stimulates you in some way, because the union in our ancient times served multiple purposes. Like the man would come with dowry to the woman in his family to prove that he could take care of her. You know what I mean? And in combining and the two in the marriage would usually combine their nation states to form an empire. So there's different political reasons that the marriage would happen. Then you get into the thing of polygamy. Now, one of the best books that I've ever read on spirituality and relationships is this one called an African-centric Guide to a Spiritual Union. And this book rocks, okay, because it really gets into the science of what attraction is, what love really is, and things of that nature. And sometimes you, if you are real, if you're striving to be Osir in this lifetime, you'll have to realize that sometimes you may need to do things and there is no pleasure behind them. You don't feel pleasurably motivated to do it or to move in that direction. And when there is no positive reinforcement for you to move in that direction and you do so anyway, then you have achieved a high spiritual level. You're not operating based on the R complex in the mammalian brain. You're operating based on the highest aspect of Osir on the tree of life. Now, I want to read this to you out of the book, which really exemplifies not only a relationship and how it should be, but also about women's role in ancient times, which in civilizations of color, women were I don't want to say equal, but they held a very, very high position. And the reason why I don't use the word equal, because we study cosmologics, and cosmologics says a place for everything and everything in its place. So according to your temperament, whether it's cold and moist, dry and hot, or whatever, it determined what type of function and what type of place in society you had. You know, if your metabolism is very slow, for example, that is good for intuiting wisdom. Okay, if your metabolism is very high and you secrete a lot of adrenaline and things of that nature, you will be good for positions such as a police officer, fireman, or getting into sports. You know, so it says here, let me just read this. And again, if you guys want to get this book, I think it's still in print. I don't know, but you'll have to try it. All right. By way of summary, we must take note of the fact that love is an expression of the fourth division of the spirit, the ab, which expresses itself through the higher functions of the cerebral cortex. Where a people have not brought forth a system of spiritual culture, they will allow the influence of the fifth and sixth division of the spirit operating through the reptilian and mammalian brains to dictate their cultural expressions, meaning the animal spirit, the Sahu, to dictate your life. It is in this manner that an abstract, refined reality becomes confused with biological expressions. In Chapter 8, we will see that the Western conceptualization of marriage is similarly lowered to a biological level. In Chapter 9, we will see how traditional African societies implemented initiations, rites of passage, and a system of parental and societal involvement to circumvent the influence of the lower part of the brain spirit, which dominates the behavior of young people and adults who have not risen above it, and that's most adults in the Western world. That is most adults in the Western world. This is why divorce rate is so low, about 5%, so low, about 5% in traditional African society compared to 50% in America. And we know that 70% of divorces are initiated by women. And the family, in spite of being more complex, oftentimes one husband with several wives is more stable. So he's endorsing polygamy, right? And I'm not going to get into a whole debate over that. So what is he talking about? He is actually talking about the difference between the expression of Het-Heru, because Het-Heru does seek a partner that she's attracted to. But Ma'at is not about so much the attraction, but about, is this relationship going to help us to spiritually grow? Now, how does this relate to Stoicism? This means that you're getting into a situation where you may not be physically attracted to somebody. You know what I mean? But the oracles have sanctioned this relationship. God says, I need you two to be together to serve a higher purpose. So you go along with that, because that is actually being a good steward, being obedient to God. All right. Now, God always gives you a choice. You don't have to do this. God is not going to freak out and strike you down because you didn't do it. That is totally up to you. But as I said before, there's another side to the coin. When you practice Stoicism or Meneb, which is still in your heart to live truth, and you're not succumbing to the lower brain or the Sahu nature, then you are storing up Kundalini or Chi force energy. And when you're storing up that energy, you can use that energy for magical practices. So if I am engaged in some type of endeavor or objective that does not bring me pleasure, and I'm very stoic and centered about it, after a certain period of 30 days or whatever, I have stored so much spiritual energy that I can charge this crystal, or I can charge my magical wand, and this would be equivalent to a nuclear bomb, meaning the power in there would be so strong that the magic would just work instantaneously. And this is why a lot of people, when they go online and they buy crystals and stones and gems, they don't work, because basically they're not charged. When I work with people and I give them crystals, I tell them, listen, I'm going to give you this crystal that's going to bring you money, but you got to give me 3 weeks. And they're like, why? Do you have the crystal? I go, yeah, the crystal's sitting in my house, but I got to charge the crystal. And charging the crystal, I have to do it on certain days and recite the mantra so that it is properly charged. And then when I give it to you, the energy will be there and you can use it right away. That's how the practice of magic works. It doesn't work by you just buying something out of the magical store and using it. How many people have been touching that thing before you have got it? You know what I mean? So that's crazy. Hey, Wade, Harun Nefer, Hatep. So let's get back to Stoicism. So as I talked about in my broadcast before, the Stoicism was created by the Greeks. Zeno of Cyprus was the founder of Stoicism, and he got involved in Stoicism because he was a very wealthy man who became shipwrecked and lost everything. And he decided to devote his life to philosophy. Many Greeks during that time were great philosophers, okay? But the one thing they got wrong was they always looked at the external, because during that period in Greek history, it was very violent. So, and many people who wanted to live a just and right life said, I will turn away from the ills of society and pursue a higher goal of philosophical pursuit. And thus, Stoicism was born, and it was practiced by many people during that time. One was a slave, Epictetus. He was a slave and he practiced Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor, practiced Stoicism, and he was one of the most revered and noted practitioners of Stoicism, because he was an emperor. And if you understand anything about that at the time, he could have anything he wanted in the world. He could have all the women he wanted. He could have all the wine he wanted, all the food he wanted. Any piece of land was his. But he refrained from indulging his lower nature, the Sahu spirit, to practice Stoicism. And remember what I said before, that a lot of these individuals who claim to be Buddhists or Krishnas have it wrong. You don't go and just give away all your material possessions to prove that you have no attachment. No, the greatest way to practice Stoicism and Meneb is to be in the midst of your attachments, but yet not be attached to them. You don't have to give them away. You can be with them or not be with them and still be centered. Now, let's go over the virtues of Stoicism. The virtues of Stoicism talks about, first is wisdom. Next is temperance. The next one is justice. And the last is courage. These are the virtues of Stoicism that we should be practicing. Why do we practice this? Because when you learn to center yourself, when you learn to be stoic and not show an emotional reaction to whatever happens, you then step back. The spirit or consciousness within you takes a step back, and you can actually see yourself. You will experience a higher level, higher dimension of wakefulness, and you will start to realize what's important in life. Now, let me tie these virtues in to the oracle, the tarot, the Rider-Waite tarot deck. So when we talk about the first one, wisdom, we are looking at either the hermit, who is the wise man, or who I like is the priestess. And many people don't understand the meaning of the priestess. The priestess is akin to Thoth or Tahuti, because Tahuti is he is the individual, the wise one, and wisdom comes not by scripture or prophetic sayings in a book, but it comes by intuiting wisdom at the right time for the right circumstances. Because when you have just 10 commandments, those things, they don't apply to every situation and circumstance. So you have to intuit wisdom to know how to navigate specific situations. That's why Stoicism practices wisdom. The next one is temperance. And this is the card. And this is, again, the mixing and the mixing of elements, but more importantly, being centered, being tempered in your emotional expression. Next one, then, we have justice. And this is the justice card. And you have to make sure that your actions are always just, are always in line with Ma'at. And when we speak about justice, we're not talking about man-made law. We're talking about spiritual, universal law. Okay? And one of the prime laws that come out of the Kemetic spiritual way of life is that nothing, and this actually comes from Tahuti, nothing has a value in and of itself. What is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is nothing. Nothing has meaning, has value. It is only your perspective that taints it and paints it and gives it value. Is this good for you or bad for you? It is neither. It is neither. It is only your judgments and your opinions that place a value upon this. This is why a certain practice that we go through is that we go through life with not being judgmental, taking a step back and just allowing and absorbing what is happening. And this comes out of the great I-Ching oracle, which is the 61st hexagram, which talks about inner truth. Inner truth only comes from dealing with people from a perspective of not being judgmental, but allowing their psyche to work on you, meaning that you're just taking it in. You're not passing judgment. You know, years ago, I met this porn star, and her and I were just talking and all that. And she looked at me and she said something. She says, you know, Kasank, the way you look at me, I can tell you think I'm very dumb for doing what I'm doing. And I looked at her and I said, I have never even considered it, thought about it, passed judgment against you on it. And then we started talking about abuse and things like that. And I told her, look, I don't care if you're in what did she call it? A sex worker or something weird like that. That's what they call themselves. And I said, I don't care if you're a sex worker or if you are a politician. If someone abuses you, it is wrong. And the Bible says God is no respecter of person. So Ma'at, my mother, says that the law must apply to all equally. Okay? And we have to... Hey, Mike Haru Nefer, thanks for bringing that up. One of the greatest books on Stoicism is Meditations. Get that. You can get it online, download a PDF copy. Meditations is wonderful. And what I would do is, Dwa, Mike, thank you for bringing that up. Dwa meaning thank you. I'll speak Kemetian, but I'll interpret for you so that people won't get confused and say, what does that mean, he said? So Meditations is akin to the Tao and the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is a wonderful book, difficult to live by. And the Tao Te Ching is very similar to Stoicism. Very, very similar. Now, a lot of people, they talk about the art of war. I'm not concerned with the art of war. Don't even read that. Don't get into that yet. Get the Tao Te Ching and get Meditations. You read that. It's going to take you a long time to digest it and really understand what it's saying. But if you can live by what it says, you will be God on earth. Okay? Get that straight. It's wonderful. It's that powerful. Okay? Not many people can live by that. In fact, Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who practiced Stoicism, was heralded because he was among all of these temptations. And all he wanted for his life was to practice Stoicism. Okay? And when you look at the accomplishments he did, he could only do that through inner strength, which is, or courage, which is the last virtue of Stoicism. And coming out of the tarot deck. And it takes practice. Don't think that you can just walk into a situation and be emotionless and not being able to express something. Now, I just want to stop for a second and let everybody know, all the magicians in the chat room, please take an opportunity to like this video. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, please do so. So what was my point? I don't want to lose focus there, getting into this practice of Stoicism, which talks about, don't imagine an ideal society, because that will never happen. You're not going to have the ideal life, the ideal society. Now, what I have learned, and I told you the lesson that it took me many years to learn, and many hours of study to actually understand. Because somebody can tell you a great truth, but you will not understand it unless you live life. And Maud says, to understand truth, you have to live life. So the realization that I came to, and this is why I was in conflict with my aunt, and her and I didn't talk for a while, was that bad things will happen. And I thought that my aunt would protect me against the bad things. And what she tried to tell me, and I was too young and spiritually immature to understand, is that it doesn't matter if bad things happen. What is really important is your ability to recover from those bad things and not react in an overly expressive manner. For example, I have a lot of friends who are YouTubers, and they have very successful YouTube channels. And one of my friends who I've given counsel to, and he just doesn't listen, he had a major channel that was flagged and taken down. So when it went back up, he made an hour-long video of a rant of him talking about how he keeps getting flagged by people and he's upset at these people. I mean, he was literally yelling. And I understand where he's coming from, in a sense that it was wrong in them flagging him and YouTube taking his video down, which cost him money. But what I called him up, and after I saw his video, and I said to him, I'm not going to say his name, I said, you spent an hour ranting and raving about what happened. I said, these things happen. You need to be more concerned about your reaction. You should have been at peace with this and just moved on and taken the necessary steps to get your channel back up. There was no reason for you to be barking for an hour. It's like it rains outside and you start cursing and going crazy because it's raining. Rain is no big surprise. You understand logically that happens. Okay. So operating out of the higher nature, your ab nature, means that you are a spiritual individual, and logically, Sebek, left brain, you understand that this is part of life. This is part of business, So Stoicism talks about the interconnection between all things in life or in the universe, which they call is logos. But that also translates into physics or quantum mechanics, what we call quantum entanglement. And what that means is that, at the very quantum level, we find that all things are connected. All right. And this is important to keep in mind, because when you understand that there are things such as cause and effect, that things that can happen that could cause strife and trouble in your life through the actions of somebody else or certain circumstances, don't get emotionally invested, because there's nothing you can do about it. Be centered, accept it, get to the point of acceptance, and then move on to say, well, how can we address this quickly, fix it, and then move on? That is the greatest lesson that you can give to your children and anybody, in saying, listen, the bad things will happen, expect them, but the most important quality or asset you can have in life is the ability to adapt, the ability to align yourself with the way, which is the book of changes, the I-Ching, okay, which teaches you, when you do a reading, how to respond in a specific situation. The Bible doesn't do that. The Quran doesn't do that. The Torah doesn't do that. But only the I-Ching tells you how to respond to that exact situation, and the response that they give you is appropriate for that situation. That's wonderful. Now let's move on. We've talked about Stoicism, right? And how that is also the key to spiritual power, because you're storing raw force, raw force, energy. And that energy needs to be directed to an objective and to a goal. So if you're looking to get money, if you're looking to get a mate, practicing Stoicism or Meneb and Ankh Ma'at is the best way to get enough spiritual power to make something happen. Because we know as magicians that the reason that if we practice something such as the law of attraction, the secret, ceremonial magic, whatever, or whatever, a Yoruba, Ifa, the reason that we don't get the things that we want out of them is because, number one, our belief system is not powerful enough, or number two, we haven't stored up enough energy, chi energy, okay? And because when you can store up enough chi energy, you can accomplish wonders, which is why you'll see in the Christian ministry, the minister will preach and talk about gaining God's favor or miracles. And you'll see that miracles are sparse. They happen to some and don't happen to others. Why? Well, because people who receive those miracles meet the two conditions. They have a strong belief and they stored up the Kundalini energy to make it happen. There's a science to this. There's no mystery about this. Deborah. So Deborah's question is, what are your thoughts on mixing Kemetic goddesses with the Orishas? Do they mix, or should I call on them separately? So the answer to that question, Deborah, is that during slavery, we know that the slave masters imposed Christianity upon us. So I spoke about this in the previous video, how when they were, in fact, I read out of one of the chapters of the books I have, where it talks about how this one slave master came down to the slave in his cellar, or what do you call it, basement, or the basement, and he saw the shrine that the priest had, the slave, the African, because back in slavery they would use particular slaves who had good oratory skills to become ministers and pacify the slaves so they wouldn't revolt. So there's one slave master, when he went to the basement of the slave who was supposed to be preaching to the other slaves, he saw that he had the Christian idols, Mary, Jesus, but he also had the Orishas. And he was confused. He said, well, how do you have both? And if you understand anything about civilizations of melanin complexion, that's what I meant to say. Complex is good too. That we are integrated brain thinkers. So that means that we can take various different deities from various different religions and mix them very well. Let us take, for example, you'll hear me say Amen Ra. Amen is one deity and Ra is another deity. We combine them to form a third deity, Amen Ra. Okay? And that is a word of power. If you look at Israel is composed of several different things. Is Isis, and then you have Ra, and El, that is another name for God, El. Okay, so combines spells the word Israel. Okay, so that's really several gods combined to form the one word. Okay, so understand that is part of our integrated brain thinking. So that's a very good question, Deborah. So dwa'u for you asking that question. Now, I'm going to do one reading for anybody who has a question. So please put your question in the chat box if you want me to do your interpretation of your dream. I can do that for you as well. Now, moving on to Het-Heru, Hathor, my aunt. One thing you'll realize is living a stoic life or living Meneb and Ankh Ma'at can be very dry and not exciting life, right? Which is why we cannot practice the way that our Greek ancestors wanted us to do it, because it's not a fulfilling life. And they did not understand that because they weren't spiritually developed themselves, because they were just, their religion was just a bastardized version of the ancient Kemetic religion. because Kemet gave birth to the Greek civilization. So to understand this in greater depth, we have to understand that they philosophized, they did philosophy, they thought and they pondered, whereas the ancient Kemetic people worked with Tahuti by stilling the thought process and stopped thinking. The Greeks thought more, the ancient Kemetic people thought less, and by not thinking, your consciousness accessed the Akashic records and brought down a wealth of information. And the most advanced priests and priestesses, when they came into enlightenment of certain things like how to build the pyramids, levitate stone, they never wrote it down, but they placed it in the Akashic records so that you, as a magi, all you need to do is recite a cow or a mantra to access that psychic centers or those psychic gateways in the Akashic records, which were locked and could be unlocked by reciting the right mantra to bring it down as information. You understand what I'm saying? This is why archaeologists, anthropologists, when they went to Egypt to look for books on religion, on math and things, they couldn't find it. And they were like, these people are so primitive, they can't even write down how they lived, not realizing that the act of writing something down is a left brain function. And that culture didn't live by that because they stored things in the etheric psychic realm. That's very deep, people. That's very deep. That is a highly evolved culture. But we're so primitive today. That idea is so foreign to us. How do you do that? How do you place information in the Akashic records, the etheric realm? How do we do that? We already do it. We place information on this weird thing called the internet, the World Wide Web. It is the same thing. Okay. And yes, Mike, Dwau, that's right. You can access the Akashic records through mushrooms. Absolutely right. Okay. And I've trained enough to where I've gone into meditation. Remember, I talk a lot about building a relationship with your spirit, meaning that I'm more right-brained than I am left-brained. So I can go into trance like this, In fact, I have a trigger, a keyword that I use that will take me, when I recite the keyword, deep into trance. I can program myself to, for example, I can program myself to stop being hungry. And I can fast for 3-4 days and not even think about it. In fact, I forget to eat, So going back to what I was saying about the pretty girls coming to me, because, when you're working with Het-Heru, she gives you her energy, meaning you become attractive to people. So many people will come to me and say, well, I need a mate. I'll give them the Het-Heru mantra. I said, you recite this mantra, I guarantee you'll have people coming your way. You wouldn't believe it, let me just read this. I don't understand that question about transsexuality. Like when you feel both sexes at the same time, is that good or bad? You should be in tune to both sexes, to both energy, yin and yang. You should be in tune to them. But you should, as a male or female, have a propensity toward one over the other. But the problem with the way, I'm going to try and pronounce your name, and forgive me if I mispronounce it. Her. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, but good question. So we're living in the time of the sun sign, and the sun is the symbol of the male energy. So as you know, it was the Roman Emperor Constantine in 325 AD that took the Kemetic religion, which was the first, which was translated into the first Christian religion, and the first Christian church known as the Coptic Church. And he took out the worship of the female deity, Isis, or Set, to elevate in her place Heru, or Jesus. So Jesus became the patron deity. As a male deity, that was not in alignment with ancient cultures, because we always looked at life in duality, in complements. So we worship both the male and the female energy. But it was Constantine who wanted to only worship the male energy, the sun. So we're lacking the moon, which is the female energy, Auset, Isis. We're lacking that complement, which has placed the world into darkness. Hence is why everything is left brain, which is the sun, the external, and the religions of the world, Christianity, Islam, try to keep you from practicing things like meditation or astral projection. They're trying to prevent you from doing those things, because if you do, what happens? You will learn that there's no such thing as time and space. You'll learn that there is a thing called the Akashic Records, where you can access all kinds of occult information and have like crazy abilities to do things that would amaze your friends and family. Okay. And this is where you get into time travel. And I just attended this lecture by the scientist who blew my mind over a book she wrote on time travel. And basically what she says is that time travel is possible by using your consciousness and not an actual physical time machine. And I said, I've been trying to tell people that, and people aren't listening to me. I said, you can travel through space and time using consciousness, because that's what you really are. And consciousness has the property of non-locality. It's not fixed in any one point in space and time, because time is an illusion. Okay, so she just validated everything I've always said, and she had actually documented individuals who had traveled into the future and into the past. So it's phenomenal. I was just like amazed. And then she talked about some other things that I can't mention to you, because I don't want them to come after me. But she talked about things that are going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of scientific achievements and experiments that the ruling elite are going to use in their evil, subversive purposes. So be aware of that. Okay, this is why. As Magi's, we seek to empower ourselves. This is what you want to do. What I teach is the act of teaching you how to become a master priest or magician. I don't beat you over the head and say you're a sinner, you're going to go to hell. I say, I'm not judging you. Here's the tools you need to elevate yourself to God man, God woman. Okay? Rashid, Carmichael, peace. Het-Heru mantra, Om, O-M-G, Vang Kling, Om Vang Kling. All right. So now let's go back to Het-Heru. As I said before, being stoic can be a very dry and dull life. Thank the gods that we have had Thor, Het-Heru, the most beautiful of goddesses, associated with the planet Venus. Okay, she comes along and says, yes, practice Stoicism, but you don't have to live a dull life, because I will give you the power to experience joy from within. A power of joy that does not depend on external acquisitions of wealth or material, that you can be joy just to be joyful. So when my friend and I studied in the priesthood, and he pointed to the woman that he did the reading on and said that her and I would make a good couple and we should look at getting married. And I said, I am not attracted to her. And he said, you can invoke attraction. It's an emotion that you can invoke within you. And I was like, wow, you're right. You're darn right. That is true. Because remember, nothing has a quality in and of itself as to who he tells us. So therefore, if nothing has a quality, I can assign a quality to it by going into all set trance state and giving myself a post-hypnotic suggestion that when I see individual, this woman, I will become attracted to her. Because attraction is a program. It's a conditioning. It is a program. It is a conditioning. It is a blueprint. You think you have no control over it, but it's merely been programmed to you either by culture, family, or society. This is why you find certain people attractive and certain people not. So I began the process of deep meditation to understand my roles and responsibility, what there would be as a husband, and making sure that the family would grow and prosper and things of that nature. This is what you do. And then as you work on it, you invoke Het-Heru, and then you start feeling the joy and the pleasure that comes along with just being who you are and not dependent on any one person or thing. There was a question. Let me go back to that question. If everything is an illusion, where do the images come from, i.e. change in weather, water? Very good question, Sue-Ann. MCA. No, I am not a DJ. I'm not on the mic. MCA means a mass collective agreement. Before we all came to this fourth dimensional experience known as Maya, the illusion, we all, as higher being spirits, gathered around in the etheric realm and said, we have to come to an agreement on this scenario we call reality. Well, in order for us to have an experience, what shall we create? We shall create a sky. We shall create clouds. We shall create this thing called gravity. So we formed the mass collective agreement that these things would exist so that we can have the interaction. It's the same thing when a gamer is programming. He thinks, I'm going to create this world. What will this world have? This world will have grass. It'll have clouds, of the sun. It'll have buildings. So that's how it works. We all create this experience, and then individually we have a destiny and we follow through with that destiny. Okay, so my point was that the Greek philosophers fell short on really tapping into the power of Stoicism by not bringing Het-Heru into the picture. And because their version of Het-Heru was pleasure from material acquisition, material things. But the true expression of Het-Heru is inner joy. It is not joy based on what is in your surroundings and can make you happy. You know, like my person, I call my person because myself has no likes or dislikes. It's always centered. But my person loves chocolate. And when I eat chocolate, I feel good. But I understand that in reality, that it's all neurons and synaptic connections in the brain that fire off. They give the illusion of pleasure from eating the chocolate. Because in reality, that, you know, somebody may eat chocolate and have an allergic reaction and die, and they hate chocolate. So inherently, there's no quality within chocolate itself. All right. So if you marry Stoicism with or Mineb and which with Het-Heru, you're going to experience not only enlightenment, but inner joy and a peace that cannot be disrupted by anything that happens to you in life. And if something happens to you in life, understand that that is part of life, and you need to quickly recover and keep moving and keep moving. That's what you need to do. Now, we in the priesthood that practice Mineb and Ankh and Ma'at, and the techniques that we use was we would go 30 days without laughing or smiling and just observe the world. And this teaches you how not to be overreactive in situations. Because after you go through the 30 days of no laughter and no smiling, you learn to control your expressions so that when somebody says something, and if you're very sensitive, you may take it personal, you don't then overreact to it. You just let it fly off. Oh, okay. That used to bother me. Now it doesn't. Now, another thing that we did, and you can do, is we would keep a book, what we call like a book of charms, or we keep a book, and we would write all of the triggers. Things like, for example, when I smell chocolate, I want chocolate really bad. Or another trigger would be when somebody sneezes, I get annoyed when people sneeze. Okay. So you write down those triggers and then you meditate and see yourself going through that situation, a scenario at peace. And it doesn't disturb you. So if you have, for example, a coworker that really bothers you, then you write down the things that they say that may bother you, go into meditation, and then visualize yourself not reacting to it, being stoic, and then take it a step further and being joyful. Okay. And watch how your life will change for the better. And always remember, when you're being stoic, you're storing up the spiritual power. So then now you want to take a piece of paper, write your goal on it. I want $500. I want $1,000. I want that house I've always dreamed about. Write that down. Now, let's say, for example, you wanted this beautiful house, right? So then practice Stoicism for 60 days. And then write the objective there, fold it, hold on to it, and meditate with it. Or get yourself a quartz crystal, okay? Hold it after the end of the 60 days of being stoic, and then charge this crystal with all that stored energy, Kundalini energy that you have. And then once you have that stored energy, okay, in this crystal, put it on your shrine with the proper herbs. And now forget about it. Let the magic work. Don't think about it anymore. Be confident that the house is coming to you, and it will come to you. And if you don't see the house in 3 months, in 4 months, so what? So what? You're at peace. Remember, you're not relying on material things to bring you happiness. Now, when you do that, and you center yourself, and you tell your spirit that I want that house, but if I don't get it, I'm still joyful. Boom, it happens. Because when you are centered like that, and when you can take it or leave it, you're activating the Sekert level of spiritual power. Sekert is the goddess of spiritual power. That means that you have elevated yourself to such a high level that you are now God on earth. Because the secret to accessing the stored spiritual power in the etheric realm is the fact that you're not operating based on your Sahu nature, your animal spirit. That is the protection mechanism that Ma'at puts in place. Ma'at says, I cannot give access because Ma'at stands in the way of you getting to Sekert. Or you can interchange Sekert with Ptah. Ma'at stands in the way of you accessing the power from Sekert or Ptah by saying that you cannot get that power until you're acting righteously. And how do you act righteously? Not by scripture or the word of God or by Jesus or by Muhammad, but by not operating based on your lower animal instincts. Could you imagine if God gave access to spiritual power to men who acted out of their own base animal nature? The world would be corrupt. So Ma'at puts that mechanism in place of justice and saying, if you want spiritual power, you have to be stoic. You have to be men'eb. You have to be Het-Heru. You have to experience joy just for being joyful and not be joyful because you want something. So when you can say, I'll take it, I'll leave it. I'm happy if I have it, and I'm happy if I don't have it. Then it comes to you. You ever think about a person and wish they would call you, and they don't call you? And then when you forget about them, bling, they call you. You're like, oh, wow, what the, wow, out of the blue. Just when I stopped thinking about you. And the students, we practice money magic, okay? And let me see if I can get this for you real quick. Okay, so we practice money magic, and this is what we call is the money draw herbs here. Okay, and I make the special pouches and the crystals to attract money, and I show them exactly how it's done. And everyone comes back to me and says, you know, I got extra money. I didn't believe it. And it works, you know. Now, there's a large percentage of people that I teach that don't do it because a lot of people don't want to practice Stoicism. It's too hard for them. They want the easy way out. Sebek Sebek likes things easy. He's like, I want to do the least amount of work in the least amount of time. And Sebek's not bad. He's just very smart. He's kind of like an innovator. He'll go into a factory and he'll see the cookie cutter conveyor belt system and say, how can we improve this? How can we, we're producing widgets at 10 every hour. How can we produce 40 widgets in an hour instead of just 10? And Sebek will come up with a master plan to do that. So he's awesome. Sebek is awesome. Or Sobek. Some people call him Sobek, S-O-B-E-K. We practice the money magic because I believe there's two things that you should teach your children and you should learn first and foremost yourself. If you're in an airplane, you know how you're traveling in the plane, and they tell you that if in the case of emergency, the oxygen mask comes down, that you should put it on you first, then the child, not the child, but you first. So I believe as an adult, you should learn two things and then pass those two things off to your children. The first is money magic, and the second is magic itself. Okay? That's what you should learn because life will kick your ass. It will kick your ass. And if you don't know magic, it's all the worse. All the worse. And, I let people know, don't mess with me. Don't mess with me because if you mess with me, you're not going to see a reaction from me. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to call the police. I'm going to sick my dog on you or I'm going to shoot you. No, I was just like, okay, all right. You shouldn't have did this. You were wrong. It's incorrect. You haven't apologized. You haven't making amends for it. So I just go back and I do a powerful ritual. And sometimes I'll even invoke a spirit to go after them. And then I let it go. All right. Okay. I'm invoking the spirit. I had a family member do something. And I tried to explain to him, why he was wrong. And he knew he was wrong, but his defense was to get angry and yell and yell and yell. So you couldn't have a really decent conversation with him. That's okay. Well, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm going to invoke an evil spirit and he's going to come to you and he's going to deal with you. And this spirit is going to make you see truth. Okay. So that's how you should be operating because I don't have time to argue with people, to debate with people, because Stoicism teaches us that we attend to what's necessary and you should live a virtuous life. And part of living a virtuous life is not caring what people think because most people are stupid. All right. And they're not even real. They're projections. They're avatars that you created so you can have an interaction and fourth dimensional experience. So don't argue with something that's not real. Let me prove this to you. Okay. So there is a certain type of woman that I like. And I don't mean like attraction. Not that. I'm talking about just physically. Because when I write my movies, I always envision, like, I love strong female characters. There's a certain type of woman I like. So I'll say she has long hair. She'll have this and that, right? Now, when I write that, I notice something very peculiar, that a lot of women I meet look just like that. Why is that so? Why is that so? It's because I'm creating that I'm creating the people that I see before me. When I take students out to like downtown LA, Midtown Manhattan, to the Vegas Strip, I say, I want you to look at all these people. Look at their faces. You are manifesting them. And if you look very carefully, you'll see duplicates, meaning you'll see people that look exactly like one another. And that is you basically pulling from the template of reality and duplicating things. In the film The Matrix, Neo saw a cat, and the cat did something very weird. And Neo was like, I just saw something. And Trinity was like, what was that? What did you see? Because that could be a glitch in the Matrix. So you're seeing a glitch in the Matrix because you're creating the avatars. You're creating the people. Your mate is a creation of you. You created your mate. Your mate is not a real individual. No, your experience is not an objective experience because there's no outside world. Your experience is purely subjective, meaning what you're going through, no one else is going through. Let me break this down to you. When your friend leaves and goes home and you don't see your friend again, your friend does not exist. Your friend is not at home watching TV. No, they do not exist. It is only when you determine that you want to meet up with your friend again, do you create your friend. It is like a 3D game. You know, you had the PlayStations. I don't know what the latest games are. You know what I mean? I loved zombie games. Okay, but what I'm saying is, the computer creates the scenery and all the individuals in the virtual world. Those zombies in the game, you know, they're not existing. They're not having conversations when you're not playing the game. They're not eating dinner when you're not playing the game. They only exist when you turn the game on or you put your money into the video game and start playing. It is the same thing with everyone in your life. When they leave your sphere of awareness, they don't exist anymore. I talked about this before, that when you are not connected or talking to individuals, they exist in a different time. Some exist in the future, some exist in the past. This is known as time dilation. This has been verified. So if you talk to someone on the phone who's your friend, you're actually talking to somebody that could be in the future or the past, because we all don't exist in the same space-time continuum. We need to understand that. In fact, the lecture I went to with this scientist, she said it so beautifully, that the nature of reality is not objective. It is energetic. It changes depending upon your beliefs and what you think. So if when I'm writing my movies, have an ideal character, like I have an ideal dog. There's a certain type of dog that I love. I love dogs, but there's one type of dog, a golden retriever. I love those dogs. I notice I see a lot of golden retrievers, no other species. Golden retrievers all around the place. I write them into my movies and I see them. When I'm writing the character of the female lead, I always see that same in the audition we had today. She came in exactly how I wrote her. Freckles in the face, beautiful hair. There was a magician, I forgot his name, who was online, and he talked about how writing stories is a great magical practice, which you can use to conjure up things that you want in your life. So, for example, if you want a position at this great company, write a story, say, John went for an interview and John got the job. Be very detailed in writing it, okay? And watch how your spirit will manifest it, okay? But again, that only works through the practice of Meneb and Ankh and Ma'at, or Stoicism. Being centered to where you could take it or you could leave it. If you are able to master this, no one can oppose you. No one can disrupt your peace. You become Neter, God on earth. So what I'd like to do now is, in closing, if you have a question, I can do a quick reading for someone. Let me just see. Oh, okay. I see we're discussing on mushrooms. So that's up to you if you want to get into the whole mushroom thing. There's also ayahuasca, and there's DMT for those who are interested. Those will take you into the Akashic records, and you'll also be able to communicate with interdimensional beings. But those herbs are illegal. So there are trips that you could take to South America to work with shaman under a safe environment that they could administer the herbs to take you to that different level. But that's for those who really are deeply into this as a way of life and want to communicate with other beings that are out there. And these beings do exist, and these beings can help you. You know, I speak and counsel people who are very oppressed, You know, Stoicism was used by prisoners of war, Jewish prisoners of war. It was used by Africans, especially during slavery, because the slave masters didn't like it when a slave was happy. So the slave had to always put on the proverbial poker face. They had to be centered. And to the point of fact, they could not even show that they loved their children, because if they showed any love for their children, the slave master would take the child away and sell the child. So they always had to be centered. Unfortunately, things have gotten to the point now to where the descendants of slaves have gone in the opposite direction, and are now overly emotional and hyper reactive to things. And we need to get back to this practice of Stoicism and Meneb to understand that to overcome the evil individuals, the ruling elite, the only way that we will be able to overcome them and become victorious is through the practice of magic and things like Stoicism. Because you're not going to beat them militarily, you're not going to beat them strategically, because they are of high intelligence, meaning that they are genetically engineering themselves to be the most intelligent and the most physically fit. And they also have a mastery and a good understanding of future events. So they use oracles, they use things like future projection to see possible outcomes in the future and to plan for that. And there is no way you can beat an individual who is operating at that level, but to come up to that level as well. So, and they are involved in the dark arts, very black magic stuff. So we have to tune into the light beings, our ancestors, to give us the light and the wisdom of Tahuti Tha, to get out of this oppressive environment that we're in, and to elevate ourselves to the fifth dimensional level, to where we become masters of time and space. With that, I want to thank all of the magicians in the chat room for tuning in today. If you are interested in getting a free copy of this book, I will give it to you if you will send me an email with the subject matter Het-Heru, and I want you to answer this question: who is Het-Heru's counterpart, equivalent counterpart, the Kemetic name for Het-Heru's counterpart? Okay, who actually also happened to be Set, or Set's mate. So if you know the name and you're the first person to get that correctly, I will send you a free copy of an African-centric guide to a spiritual union, which details polygamy, how our spirit is composed, the different aspects of the brain, the lower nature and the higher nature. I just think this is an awesome book. This book, I've read this years ago, and I read this again recently, and I was just blown away. But how deep this book is, and breaking everything down in terms of like the problems we're having with relationships, why so many people seem to be overly focused on sex, while other people aren't focused enough on sex, and why, how to operate at a very high level to where you can have a harmonious relationship, and also be centered if you're not in a relationship, and be at peace with who you are right now. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. I've really gone a long time here. I didn't mean to go so long, but there was so much good information that we had. And I want to thank you all too for sharing and speaking with each other through the chat to exchange information. And that's important, that we all help each other, in a very positive way. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more great information. And to once we get the Osiris report link back up, I'll let everyone know through notifications. And until my next broadcast, this is your man, Kasank Ma'a Keparu. Amen Ra.